You finally finish the grueling visa process. You pack your boxes, land in Spain, unpack in your new apartment, and, well, you think you could finally breathe.
Yeah, the hard part is over, right?
Exactly. But in reality, a hidden financial timer just started ticking. The Beckham Law application window closes exactly 6 months from the moment you start work or register with Social Security in Spain.
Right, not when you get your physical residency card.
Yeah, not when you get your NIE either. That is your foreigner's identity number. It starts strictly when you start working.
And if you miss that deadline, the window isn't just paused, it is permanently gone. You could find yourself facing standard progressive tax rates that climb all the way up to 47%.
Instead of a flat 24%.
Exactly.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack the complex, often hidden realities of relocating to Spain as a high earner or, a remote worker.
We're looking at a huge stack of 2026 data, legal reviews, and strategic relocation insights.
Yeah, specifically drawing on the expertise of Brian Stevendale and the Santons Relocation Platform, acting as our guide to help you avoid the most expensive mistakes international buyers make. Because, let's face it, most people hear about the Beckham Law way too late.
They usually hear about it around month 5, when the panic sets in. And to understand why this 6-month window is so critical, we really have to look at the staggering financial weight of the Beckham Law itself. Formally, this is Article 93 of Spain's income tax law.
Also known as the special tax regime for expatriates. I think we need to break down the mechanics of what that actually means for someone's wallet. We hear flat tax thrown around a lot, but how does this actually function in the Spanish system?
Well, the core mechanism is a 24% flat tax rate on your Spanish-sourced income up to 600,000 euros.
Okay.
And anything you earn above that 600,000 euro threshold is taxed at 47%. Now, this special regime applies for the year you arrive, plus 5 additional years.
Right, so you're getting, 6 total years of this protected flat rate.
Precisely.
Let's put some real numbers to that so we can visualize the stakes here. Imagine you are moving to Spain, keeping your U.S. or U.K. job, earning a 200,000 euro salary.
Right.
If you miss the Beckham Law, you are on the progressive scale, meaning a huge chunk of that income is getting hit at 47%. Saving the difference between a 24% flat rate and a 47% top marginal rate over 6 years isn't just a nice little bonus to cover tapas on the weekend.
No, not at all.
We are talking about structural wealth preservation. It is hundreds of thousands of euros staying in your pocket.
And the income tax cap is huge, but the secondary mechanisms of the law are arguably just as powerful.
Wait, really? How so?
Under the Beckham Law, your foreign-sourced non-employment income falls completely outside of Spanish taxation.
Oh, wow.
We are talking about overseas dividends, rental income from properties back home, and capital gains on foreign assets. The Spanish tax authority essentially pretends you are a non-resident for those assets.
That is massive.
It is. Plus, you are entirely exempt from Spain's wealth tax on any assets held outside of Spain.
So who actually gets to use this? Because it sounds almost too good to be true, which usually means there's a catch with eligibility.
Yeah, the primary gatekeeper is the 5-year rule. You cannot have been a Spanish tax resident in the previous 5 years.
Okay, that makes sense.
Historically, this was aimed at elite athletes, hence the nickname, after David Beckham used it when he signed with Real Madrid.
Oh, right.
But today, it applies to a massive range of professionals. It covers remote workers holding the Digital Nomad Visa, executives, entrepreneurs, and investors. And crucially, it is a national law. It applies across all regions, from Madrid and Barcelona to Valencia and Andalusia.
Which brings us back to the trap. If the benefits are this monumental, why do so many smart, wealthy relocators totally miss out? It seems to come down to a fundamental misunderstanding of when the clock actually starts.
Yeah, the mechanics of the 6-month window are incredibly unforgiving, and the confusion stems from mixing up immigration milestones with tax milestones. The countdown begins strictly on the date of your registration with Spanish Social Security, or the start date listed on your employment contract, or Digital Nomad Visa authorization.
I want to really highlight this for anyone listening who might be in the middle of this process right now. It has absolutely nothing to do with getting your physical Thai card, your foreigner identity card, or when you finally get your NIE.
People naturally assume their tax clock starts when they feel officially settled in the country, like when they finally have all their plastic ID cards in their wallet, or they sign a long-term lease.
Yeah, that's what I would assume.
But the Spanish tax authority doesn't care about your physical cards. They only care about when your economic activity began. To apply for the Beckham Law, you have to file a very specific document called Form 149.
Wait, let me push back on this. If I missed this Form 149 deadline by a single day, let's say my local accountant was slow, or I was waiting on a translation of my birth certificate, surely the Spanish government grants a grace period for bureaucratic delays.
There is zero grace period.
None at all.
None. It is a hard administrative cutoff. The tax agency accepts no extensions and absolutely no late applications. If you miss that 6-month window by 24 hours, you are permanently locked into the standard progressive tax rates for the rest of your time in Spain. This administrative friction is the real danger zone. As we mentioned, most expats only start seriously thinking about their taxes around month 4 or 5 of living in Spain.
The famous month 5 panic.
Exactly that. By then, they are scrambling, they have to find a qualified advisor, gather international paperwork, and file Form 149 before the buzzer sounds.
That panic is completely understandable. I mean, you spend a year stressing over the visa, you finally get there, you're trying to figure out where to buy groceries and how to set up internet, and meanwhile, this invisible tax guillotine is dropping.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, navigating the Beckham Law is complex enough on its own. But diving into the sentence data, things get wild if you were coming from the U.S. or anywhere outside the EU. The legal layers essentially double.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S.-specific angle is a perfect example of how two entirely different legal systems collide.
Right.
In 2026, we're seeing a lot of U.S. W-2 employees successfully obtaining the Digital Nomad Visa. But to do this, they have to prove their U.S. employer explicitly authorizes remote work from Spain.
And just to clarify, a W-2 employee means you are a standard full-time employee where the company handles your payroll taxes, as opposed to a 1099 independent contractor.
Yes, exactly. And proving you can work abroad isn't just forwarding a casual Slack message from your boss saying, sure, have fun in Madrid.
Right.
It requires formal legal documentation. But the bigger hurdle is the shadow payroll. Spain requires a mechanism to handle local withholdings for your salary. But your U.S. company likely doesn't have a legal corporate entity or a bank account in Spain.
So how does a company in Chicago pay Spanish Social Security?
They use a shadow payroll provider. It is essentially a third-party agency in Spain that acts as the legal payer on paper. They calculate the Spanish taxes, withhold them from your U.S. salary, and remit them to the Spanish government. Setting this up is complex, and then you have to factor in the U.S. and Spain tax treaty and the foreign earned income exclusion, or FEIE.
Let me use an analogy here, because I think a lot of people assume their regular guy back home can handle this. Trying to use a local Spanish tax advisor to handle your U.S. and Spain cross-border taxes is like hiring a brilliant electrician to fix your plumbing.
That is exactly what it is.
They're both experts in houses, but they speak entirely different technical languages. You need someone who understands the wiring and the pipes simultaneously.
The electrician and plumber analogy is spot on. Tax treaties exist to prevent you from being double taxed on the same dollar. However, they do not prevent you from having double the reporting obligations.
Right, I see.
You actually have to file perfectly in both countries to claim those treaty benefits. A standard U.S. CPA will not know the intricacies of Spanish Form 149, and a standard Spanish tax advisor will not understand IRS compliance or how the foreign earned income exclusion interacts with the Beckham Law. You absolutely need a cross-border specialist.
We should also talk about a massive legal shift that just happened, because there is some incredibly good news for non-EU residents in the latest 2026 data. We have to look at the July 2025 High Court ruling.
Oh, yes. You are referring to SAN 3630 over 2025. This was a historic decision that fundamentally changed the math for international property investors.
Tell me more about that.
Previously, only EU and European Economic Area citizens could deduct property expenses from their Spanish rental income. Non-EU residents like Americans, Brits, or Canadians were taxed on their gross rental income.
Which is brutal. If the roof leaks on your rental property and costs 10 grand to fix, an American couldn't deduct that expense, while a French owner could.
It made the yield on Spanish rental properties terrible for non-EU investors. But this July 2025 ruling finally levels the playing field. It allows non-EU residents to deduct those property expenses just like EU citizens.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you are an American renting out a property in Spain, your tax burden drops from a flat 24% on your gross income down to 24% on your net income. You can finally deduct mortgage interest, repairs, insurance, and property management fees.
That single ruling completely changes the return on investment for an American buying a rental property in Spain. Okay, so we had solved the income tax puzzle. But according to the research, where you physically unpack your bags in Spain determines a totally different, potentially massive financial hit. Let's talk about the wider Spain tax picture and the dreaded wealth tax.
This is where Spain's system of autonomous communities really comes into play. Unlike the Beckham Law, which is governed at the national level, the wealth tax, known as patrimonio, is strictly regional.
And the differences aren't just minor percentage tweaks, right?
No, the differences are night and day. Regions like Madrid and Andalusia have applied a 100% exemption to the wealth tax. That means a zero effective wealth tax in those areas.
Wow.
Meanwhile, regions like Catalonia, the Balearics, and Valencia actively enforce progressive wealth taxes. Catalonia, for example, taxes your net assets above 500,000 euros.
The absurdity of this is wild when you think about it. You could perfectly execute your Beckham Law application, secure your 24% flat income tax rate, and then lose a fortune in wealth tax simply because you bought a house on the wrong side of an invisible regional line.
Exactly.
You could buy a villa just over the border of Andalusia, crossing into Murcia, and suddenly owe tens of thousands of euros a year just for owning your own assets.
Yeah.
Choosing between Barcelona and Madrid isn't just about whether you prefer the beach or the capital. It is a structural financial decision for high net worth buyers.
You really have to project the regional tax burden over a decade of ownership to understand the true cost of a property. And alongside navigating those regional taxes, you need to understand the specific visa income thresholds because they dictate how you are allowed to live in the country in 2026.
Let's unpack the mechanisms behind those visa numbers. We see all these acronyms like SMI, IRPF. What do they actually mean?
For the Digital Nomad Visa, the income requirement is 200% of the SMI. SMI stands for the minimum interprofessional wage, basically Spain's minimum wage.
Okay, got it.
For 2026, 200% of the SMI translates to approximately 2,850 euros per month. On the other hand, the non-lucrative visa, or NLV, requires 400% of the IPREM index.
Why use a totally different index for a different visa?
Because of the nature of the visas, IPREM is the public income indicator of multiple effects. It is the index Spain uses to calculate social benefits, grants, and welfare. The non-lucrative visa is designed for retirees or those living off purely passive income, like investments or pensions. It strictly prohibits any form of work. Since you aren't working, your financial requirement is tied to the welfare index, coming in at roughly 28,800 euros per year. But if you plan to open your laptop, send emails, and earn a salary, you have to use the Digital Nomad Visa, which is tied to the minimum wage index.
That makes total sense when you look at the mechanics behind it. And tying all of this back to taxes, we have to talk about the 183-day rule.
Yes. The 183-day rule is the universal trigger for tax residency. If you spend more than half the year, 183 days, physically present in Spain, you become a tax resident.
Wait, if I am under the Beckham Law, do I still count my days? Does the 183-day rule still apply to me?
It does, but the Beckham Law acts as a shield. You still become a tax resident after 183 days, but the Beckham Law changes how you are treated as a resident. It essentially tells the government to pretend you are a non-resident for tax categorization.
I see.
Without the Beckham Law, crossing that 183-day threshold subjects your worldwide income and your worldwide assets to Spanish taxation at progressive rates.
Hearing all these ticking clocks, strict filing windows, shadow payrolls, and regional tax traps, it's incredibly overwhelming. How does anyone actually execute this move safely without making a six-figure mistake?
Well, based on the strategy outlined by Brian Stevendale at Santons, there are 3 clear, immediate actions you need to take.
Let's hear them.
Action 1 is the most urgent. If you have started any work activity in Spain within the last 6 months or registered with Social Security, you need to speak to a cross-border specialist this week. Do not wait until month 5. The clock is already ticking.
Action 2. Go to us.santons.com and use the Santons Spain Plan tool. I love this feature because it gives you a personalized, data-driven picture of your relocation. It factors in your specific visa, your income type, and the regional tax implications of where you want to live.
And action 3 is to equip yourself with the right information before you hire anyone. You can download the free Beckham Law checklist and the tax guide for Americans directly from their platform. A centralized gateway like Santons is vital because it connects you to a network of verified specialists.
Rather than trying to piece together a fragmented puzzle of local advisors who might not talk to each other.
Precisely. You don't want your immigration lawyer handling your visa in a silo. while a local accountant handles your Form 149, completely unaware of your U.S. tax treaty requirements. Having experts across tax, visas, NIEs, mortgages, and currency integrated in one place prevents the exact disconnects we have been warning about today.
The relief that provides is enormous. As the person moving, you don't have to get a law degree in Spanish tax code. You just need to know exactly when to tag in the right experts. Let's bring this all together. Everything we have discussed today, the data, the Spain plan tool, the checklist, is completely free to use on the Santons platform.
Right, there is no registration required to access the guides.
It is direct, honest, and data anchored. The expert network is simply there waiting for you when you are finally ready to make your move.
The 2026 data paints a very clear picture. Spain is still one of the most incredible lifestyle and investment destinations in the world. The opportunity is massive, but the financial success of your relocation depends entirely on navigating the friction up front.
If this deep dive helped you, share it with someone who is considering a move to Spain. They probably haven't heard about the Beckham Law yet, and you might just save them hundreds of thousands of euros. Now they will know. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, looking at the bigger economic picture. With regions like Madrid and Andalusia aggressively eliminating wealth taxes to attract international capital, while coastal regions like Catalonia double down on progressive taxation, are we witnessing the beginning of an internal tax war within Spain? And if so, how will this invisible financial border reshape the cultural and economic landscape of a country's most famous regions over the next decade? Will all the high net worth capital drain toward the south and the capital? It is a fascinating trend to watch. But whatever region you ultimately choose to call home, remember that hidden timer. The clock on your financial future in Spain starts ticking the very moment you start working. Make sure you beat it.